It is Friday, May 4th. Let's talk PlayStation. So we all know critically God of War is doing quite well, but how are the sales going for that game? Unsurprisingly, very good. In fact, God of War has just been crowned the fastest selling PS4 exclusive to date. 3.1 million copies sold within a matter of 3 days, which is a lot. Uncharted 4 did around 2 to 3 million after like a week or so. I think similar numbers for The Last of Us, but this is very good, and this bodes well for like what the general lead up to God of War, and a lot of us were kind of thinking, is this kind of going to be the kind of game where is it going to do really well? Of course, God of War is probably going to sell quite well, but it's just a matter of, because the game was going in such a different direction, would people possibly skip out on this game? And of course, I think the prior reviews of how well it did encouraged a lot of people that maybe were even on the fence to say, oh yeah, definitely got to get God of War. But yeah, clearly the game's doing like great, and at the very least, this bodes pretty well for the future of the next few God of War titles, because let's face it, there definitely are going to be some more, and at the very least, it's going to stick with the same general fighting mechanics, the same general idea of a much more linear story. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily a super linear game, but the fact that it's trying to tell a more meaningful story and make Kratos a more meaningful character, it definitely played out quite well. Which actually, this is going to segue nicely into our next news story about Corey Barlog, the director of God of War. He recently had mentioned with Kotaku that he has the next 5 God of War games planned out in his head, which is crazy cool. Now, a little disclaimer, of course, this does not in any way, shape, or form guarantee that there's going to be 5 God of War games. I'm sure in the next 10, 20 years, we'll probably see 5 God of War games, but him being the director of every single one of them is probably not going to happen. So it's just one of those things where he's probably thinking, oh yeah, I totally know what I would do with the next 5 God of War games, but realistically, that's probably not going to happen. But it's cool to know. I would absolutely love Corey to be the director of the next God of War game or the next few titles. I'm sure Sony might want to keep him around and have him be at the helm for this project. Of course, he was also recently quoted as saying that he would love to do a completely new original IP, which I would actually almost prefer him to do over maybe directing the next God of War title, but it'll be interesting to see what Corey does once the dust is settled and the team starts up on a new game, and what Corey will actually end up what he'll actually end up doing. So we haven't talked about PlayStation Now in a while, namely because nobody really cares about it, but an interesting development recently happened this past week. Sony has now added PlayStation 2 games to the service. So now if you round that up entirely, Sony's offering 3 different platforms to stream video games on from PlayStation 4. You can stream PS4 games, PS3 games, PS2 games. The vast majority, of course, are still PlayStation 3 games. Sony says that they're close to around 650 titles for the service, which is actually pretty nuts. But they just recently added a handful of PS2 games like Ape Escape 2, Dark Cloud 2, Hot Shots Tennis, the stuff that is currently available on the PS4 to buy and purchase, like those premium PS2 games where they're still basically emulated PlayStation 2 games, but they are up-resed a little bit. They do have trophy support. So those games are now available on PlayStation Now. So if you're a subscriber for PlayStation Now, you have access to these titles on demand. As we often discuss with PlayStation Now, I will say I don't think it's necessarily a bad service. I get that it's a mental hurdle for a lot of people to stream their games rather than have them locally saved to the hard drive or to have a physical disc to play, and I know that's always people's preferences, but at the end of the day, they're still adding a lot of games to the service, 650 games now, and now you've got PS2 games added to the mix. Granted, it'll probably be an extremely slow rollout of PS2 games, because that's just like how it's been with PS2 games. It's just, that's the one thing too. It's like, why is Sony not more on top of things when it comes to adding PS2 games to the PlayStation Store? Why are they not adding PS1 games to the PlayStation Store? There's just so much potential there. I know it takes a lot of resources and time, much more than many people probably think, because some people just think, oh, come on, Sony, just do it, when it's not necessarily like that. At least with console manufacturers, because I know a lot of times you can see the modded scene and stuff like that, where people can mod PS4s and have them just run any PS2 game and emulate any PS2 game, right? And that's all well and good. Of course, those things are certainly possible when you make modifications like that, but as a console manufacturer, they have a Q&A, a certification process, and complicated matters that they go through to certify and release a game on the store. They want to do it on their terms, and it just takes a lot longer of a process. Understandable, but I just wish they would have have more manpower and resources behind putting people to get these games on the storefront and get them added to PlayStation Now. There's still so much more that they can do with it, and they are just taking their sweet ass time. Moving on to some Sony financials, ending the fiscal year of March 31st, 2018. A few interesting data points in there, about how much money Sony's made, in credits to PlayStation Plus subscriptions increasing, software sales increasing. They're down a little bit on hardware sales, but that's what we're mainly going to talk about, which is hardware sales. Sony currently, with PS4, has shipped 79 million systems worldwide. It's a lot of PS4s. Easily in the next 2-3 months, probably, it will finally eclipse PlayStation 3 sales. The big difference here, of course, if we're talking about how PlayStation 3 ended its life cycle, which is that it, topped off at around 83 million. We're still in the midst of PS4. We still don't have a lot of major games being released for the system. We still got Spider-Man coming, Ghost of Tsushima, Detroit Become Human, Dreams. Of course, that coveted Last of Us Part 2 is going to move some units. We actually still have, at the very least, a year and a half, 2 years of healthy PlayStation 4 sales coming. So we are definitely in the midst of this system reaching about 100 million systems. I would expect the system to probably end and finish off at around 805, 810 possibly. That would be my super rough guess, because that's a far future prediction, certainly. But what's interesting is that I remember when we were doing predictions of PS3 sales, even going into the PS4's life cycle, it was interesting because when it came to PS2 to PS3, there wasn't much of a drop-off. People are still buying PS2s. People are still playing PlayStation 2s. The jump from PS3 to PS4 was pretty significant. A lot of people jump ship immediately, and I think that's going to be an even greater factor from PS4 to PS5. I think there's going to be a much greater drop-off as more and more people have a higher demand to jump into next-generation consoles, and people nowadays just want the latest and greatest, and they want to be ready to go for the next generation of hardware, right? Because we've got this situation where just so many consumers nowadays are on yearly phone upgrade plans and things like that. People are more eager to buy new technology, and it's just not like people aren't going to hold on to their PS4s the second PS5s. A lot of people are going to end up buying PS5s almost immediately. So I do figure that once PlayStation 5 does come out, that will signal a very within maybe a year crossover, we'll see PS4 pretty much on its way out. That would be my guess, but only time will tell. For our final news story, Sony recently filed a patent April 26, 2018 for some new blockchain technology. Now, if you don't know what blockchain technology is, in a general sense, it's kind of like it's a database. It's kind of like a digital wallet. It's kind of a way to track and monitor and keep hold of purchases or digital currency, things like that, right? It's a very general sense, but it can be applied in a number of different manners. And so Sony recently had filed a patent for some blockchain stuff. This is actually in conjunction with Sony Pictures, so one of Sony's subsidiaries. So this isn't necessarily related to PlayStation, but in the patent, of course, it makes express intent of how it can be used. And of course, games are listed, right? It says it can be used with music, movies, TV shows, audio, video, and of course games, and that would be filed under Sony Interactive Entertainment and possibly PlayStation. So there's nothing too crazy about this patent, right? It doesn't specifically mention PlayStation, doesn't specifically mention anything about possibly being used under Sony Interactive Entertainment. At least I didn't look at it's a long listing, so a lot of things written in there, but some of the key points in there, right, you would draw from it. Sony's a big company, of course. They're not dumb. They want to secure this technology. They want to secure whatever it is they're planning to possibly use for any division of Sony. And of course, PlayStation's the big breadwinner for Sony, so of course this would apply to them possibly. Looking forward, of course, you want to think, okay, would be something that would be on the docket for a possible PlayStation 5, next generation console, where this could possibly be used, right? So this would be a situation where Sony could typically maybe do some digital rights management with downloaded games, right? So you could possibly sell your game back to Sony, sell your game to a friend. This is digital stuff, mind you. This is all digital content, right? So everything that you buy and purchase will be tracked and monitored and kept with you at all times, despite the fact of possibly a developer removing a game or a publisher removing certain types of content or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, this can go into a number of different ways, but it could be a certain way for you to manage your content in a more secure fashion, and this could allow Sony to offer something like that, where you can buy and exchange digital goods, which of course sounds silly, but a lot of people actually are very pumped for something for this kind of future, right? Because as you download more and more digital goods today, there's this growing fear and looming worry that, oh no, I bought something on like the WiiWare shop, and guess what? WiiWare's closed, and now the game is downloaded on my Wii, but if my Wii crashes or something, and I don't, you know, boom, there goes my content. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a big fear. You know, this is kind of a safeguard, and it allows people to, the people that do enjoy reselling their goods, they don't want to be locked into buying something for $60 on PlayStation Network and then not being able to do anything with it and having nothing to show for it. Some people genuinely want this kind of technology. And, you know, you have to figure moving forward into PlayStation 5, a next generation Xbox, we're at the point with consoles, we're at the point with graphics where it's diminishing returns, right? So as we move more forward with technology, sure, graphics are going to look better, you're going to get higher frame rates, higher resolutions, but it's just not that jump from PS1 to PS2 or PS2 to PS3. It's not that exciting for people anymore. And that was like a big thing for PS3 to PS4. A lot of people are like, well, the games don't look that much better. And I would make the argument that they do look a hell of a lot better from PlayStation 3. Go out. If you still got a PlayStation 3, fire it up and take a look at Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare if you've played like Modern Warfare Remastered. You know what I mean? That's a big night and day difference. Resolution, more than anything else, can make a pretty significant difference. Same with frame rate. But moving into say PlayStation 5 and another Xbox, I mean, it's just diminishing returns. You're not going to see possibly that dramatically big of an improvement. You know, it's just not as big as of a leap. So you have to figure where we're going to see other, you know, like, how are you going to make a PlayStation 5 exciting? You know what I mean? Sony knows that's going to be a problem for them. Microsoft knows that's going to be a problem. You got to have other avenues of excitement. And that, of course, goes into a number of things. Features, having a much more vastly easy-to-use UI, like completely change the user interface, right? We're used to the PS4 dynamic menu. PS5 will, of course, sport a completely new UI, make it fast, make it snappy, make it responsive, make it easy, make it accessible. They're definitely working on something like that currently. And then you gotta think, okay, well, there's got to be features. What kind of major groundbreaking features would make a PlayStation 5 a really enticing piece of hardware that somebody would want to buy right away? Blockchain technology might do that, right? That might be a big thing where Sony on stage could announce PlayStation 5, and that would be like a big part of it. Like, oh, you know what? And all your digital goods that you've been purchasing on PS4, because that's another thing we've been saying, right? Is that this thing's more than likely going to be backwards compatible. You know, all your content transfers over, and now you can, you know, buy and sell on a marketplace, on our storefront. That comes with its own set of issues in terms of how Sony will value the content and things like that, right? That's a whole nother entirely separate beast itself. But you could see where this could possibly go. So this patent, of course, is in its infancy, but it's one of those patents where you could see this being something, right? There's a lot of avenues that Sony could go with this, and it definitely it could mean a lot for Sony Interactive, absolutely. Those are some of the news stories that I want to talk about with you guys this week. So if you didn't see it, this Monday we remembered Little Big Planet on the PlayStation 3, released in 2008. What an important game that was for PlayStation 3. Check that video out and go reflect on me as to why that game was so awesome, unique, and just very meaningful and impactful. So, let me tell you, I'm trying to work on a God of War video. I have not been able to play the game that much. I've had kind of a rough week. I actually got into a car accident. I totaled my vehicle, which sucked. I actually really liked that vehicle. I bought it brand new in 2015. So now I'm in the midst of like getting rides to work, and now I have to, right after tomorrow I'm gonna go car shopping just to buy something to get me from point A to point B, and it's just been I've been kind of like down in the dumps over that. I'm fine, because totaling a car means that you probably did enough damage for it to be kind of a serious accident. It was kind of a serious accident, but I walked away from it entirely fine. It's just been kind of a rough week, so I have not been playing many video games, so I haven't really done much of God of War. If at this point, you know, I'll finish the game, and maybe I'll try and do something. I won't review it at that point, but I want to do something with it, some sort of analysis about the game, because what's fascinating about that new God of War is that it's so dramatically different, and it's a lot more rewarding to play, and just I'm really enjoying my time with it, but I would like to do some sort of different kind of discussion on it, and so that'll happen when it happens. But I still got some new videos saved up, so don't worry, you can expect some new content on Monday as always. But anyway, thank you for bearing with me on all that nonsense. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.